All right, the video for today is about models of instruction. All right, so as we kind of consider ourselves in the classroom about to provide instruction, we're going to actually teach, like, what are some of the different approaches, what are the different models that are out there. The most common model is the direct instruction. So this is where you get up and it's essentially almost like a lecture, where you are just very directly providing the information that students need to know. It can have a few different phases depending on the model you're looking at. One of them has 4 phases where you start off with an introduction and review. Right, so there's an attention grabbing activity. You may review a little bit of the previous content to explain how it's going to connect to the new thing, and then you introduce the new topic and kind of like what are some of the main points that you're going to be covering. Right, so once it's introduced and you have that review done, we'll try to do what's just presenting the information and helping students develop their own understanding of that material. Right, we're going to help them construct that knowledge in an accurate way so they understand what's going on. And that might include, as a different phase, some guided practice, right? So a lot of times we learn best by actually doing something. So let's actually work through some problems, and we're going to do that with them, right? So we're working together either as a group and being led by the teacher, or in small groups or individually, but we're guiding them and we're helping them work through that. And then they'll have an opportunity, the last phase, for independent practice, right? Them doing it completely by themselves. And that can, again, be in the classroom, or a lot of times it might be done at home, so things like homework. All right, so that's one approach, direct instruction. A different approach is what we call guided discovery. All right, so this one is a little bit different in that you don't present the material directly to students, right? So we're going to see a contrast there, right? So it might start the same. We're still going to introduce and review and things like that. But then when we get to the new material, it's rather, we want to help students discover the information for themselves, maybe little bit by little bit. All right, so an example of this that may help us understand. In my general psychology classes, when we're talking about research, one of the things that I will do when we get to the part about experiments and what experiments are and how they're set up and everything, instead of going through and telling them, this is the definition for experiment, this is the definition for an independent variable, dependent variables, so on and so forth, I present to them a scenario. All right, so if we consider this particular circumstance, here's a question that we want to address. Right, so the one I typically use is, does eating pizza in class help improve grades? Okay, and so from there, as a class, we go through and we start designing a study. All right, we want to design a research approach that would help us address that question. Does eating pizza in class help improve grades? And as we're doing this, there will be some questions for them to consider. So as they have an idea, we will consider, is that the best idea? And then we see, how can we improve on that? What are some of the potential limitations of this approach? And we slowly start to refine it until we get to the point where we have a very solid foundational study that we could do. Once that's in place, then we go back and see, okay, independent variables, that's how this is applied here, right? When we talk about a control group, an experiment group, this is what we talked about in our example. And so we start with the discovery part of it first, and then you come in the content and you start applying everything, right? And kind of bringing everything together. So it's a great way, a different way, an interesting way, usually a more engaging way. And it sets it up so that when you explain and provide the definition of, let's say, operational definitions for research, they have a better understanding of what that actually means, right? Because they've already kind of done it with the example that you started with. So that's one approach. Another model of instruction, another approach to teaching in the classroom is what we call lecture discussion. So it's not necessarily the direct instruction that we saw before, but rather maybe we will have some lecture, and then as part of that, to break it up, we will have discussions or other activities. All right, so let's take a little bit of introducing material and take that material and apply it, right, before we introduce new material. And that application can either be through activities, discussion, or something like that. Okay. And then one last model to consider is what we call flipped instruction. All right, so typically you come to class to learn, and then you are sent off to do homework or other activities. And so what the flip model wants to do is exactly that, flip it. So all the learning and the reviewing of the material, that is done at home on their own. All right, so this might require, you might not see this until like high school. You might see it more in college. You probably won't do this in elementary school too much. Middle school just depends. But essentially, one of the things that we do see is that depending on the content, it's not going to work for everything, but depending on the content, a lot of times, if it's something that's a little more straightforward, it's something that we can learn on our own. What we have more difficulty in, though, a lot of times, is on the assignments. When we're given something to do, sometimes we need more assistance with that rather than with understanding the material. So a flipped classroom wants you to learn everything as best you can on your own, so that when you come to class, maybe we can just clarify a few things, make sure if anybody has any questions and resolve those questions. But then the time in class primarily is spent working on assignments and activities, and then the teacher is there to directly support, right? They're there to answer questions and to guide you in completing the assignments. So there's more, assistance and support in that area rather than in the learning process. So again, may not work for everything, but it is something to consider. It's something I've done with some of my classes before to great success. But then I also find that some students hate it while other people love it. So it really comes down sometimes to individual preferences too. Right? But those, again, just some models of instruction to consider. Obviously, there are other ones out there, different variations on how you can apply these things. And so it's coming down to what you think would be best for the students that you're going to be teaching at the level you're going to be teaching them, for the specific content that you're going to be teaching them, and what might be the most effective way to present that information to meet those learning objectives.